episode 138 of Coffee and Co-Read, your source for all things literary, with Kristen
and Catherine, where we believe there's nothing better than a hot coffee and an awesome book. Join us for our virtual book club, where we take one book a month and dive into all of the drama, adventure, and romance we can find. Hey, Kristen.
Hi, Catherine.
So this week, we figured we would talk about something that we've talked about a little bit in a lot of our books, because we do like to read books that are fantasy. But I guess like heightened senses, and specifically we always get into smell with our fae, vampire, monster. What other kind of beings have we read that smell?
I think that's mostly it. The vampires.
Yeah.
Oh, the werewolves. You know.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Those alpha daddy, like.
Yeah. And even sometimes in, like, human books, they'll say it, and I'm like, there's no way you can smell that.
I've never read this in a human book.
No. It's only been in, like, when she's like, I don't want it, and he's like, I can tell. Like, those kind of books. I've read it. Maybe it's only been, like, once, and I don't even remember what book, but it has definitely come up, because I've been like, this suspends reality for me. I don't think you can. Yeah. So I guess this week, when we get into it, we do find out that he can smell when she's aroused, which is a big thing. But then also, they have to deal with some sewage during this week. And I'm like, their smell being better than anybody ever and having to go through that, I cannot imagine.
Yeah.
How awful that is.
Yeah, I guess it's one of those things. And, like, a part of me understands why they always do, like, the heightened sense of smell. Like, it's an appropriate, I think, it's an appropriate trait for a predator. Mm-hmm. And, like, that's what these monsters are. Like, you know, they're portrayed very much as predators. So I understand the heightened sense of smell, but, like, I feel like they use it a lot when it's convenient. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like, if a girl is, like, saying no, but he can smell her arousal, so she says no, but she means yes. It's like, I feel like it's sort of a way to get around the whole consent thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I can tell. Like, and sort of jumping back, I said a couple weeks ago that I read Haunting Adeline, and I find that book did that a lot. Maybe not with smell, but like body reaction, right? So like, you're wet, so obviously you don't mean no.
Yeah. Which is not how consent works.
No.
You can be wet and still mean no.
Yeah. But I feel like this is sort of the fantasy sort of version. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like, I can tell that you're aroused. So, like, you might be saying no, but you mean yes.
Yeah.
And I don't know how I feel about it.
That is a good point, because it is very much that. Like, that. In a lot of cases, it is that it's solely to be like, you want this, which is not okay.
No, but at the same time, like, it's a fantasy book, so, like, how much of it are we, like, forgiving versus, no, we should probably try and find something else.
Yes, because, like, they also kill people. Yeah. So it's morally gray anyway. And it's like when we read Bitten, and there were very
questionable consent.
Yeah. But then, like, they love each other, so it's fine. Like, you know, it's clearly not. But they're also wolves, so it's like, I'm not necessarily going to be here to morally judge them, but in some cases, it is kind of like, yeah, I'd be very upset.
Like, this is slightly icky.
Very upset. Putting it mildly, yeah. Yeah, that is a good point. What sense would you like to have heightened if you had one?
Probably eyesight, so that it would be normal.
That's fair.
Because right now it's real bad.
I got my eyes lasered, so I fixed that one.
I feel like sense of smell, though, is, like, high up there on the list of, like, ones I would not want.
Exactly.
Because, like, then you would literally smell everything. And, like if why would I want to smell, like, okay, this is going way over the top with it. But, like, okay, say I'm having dinner with my family. Like, I wouldn't want to smell a family member's arousal. Like, if they were, like...
Ew, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, but you wouldn't want that. Like, if my mom and dad are, like, having a conversation and something happens, I don't want to know.
No. No, thank you.
And, like, you don't want to know every time someone poops.
No, definitely not.
Or, like, farts or something. Like, right now we live in blissful ignorance.
It's true. But it's also, like, oh, yeah, I can't imagine. It'd be like strangers in the street, though. Like, you'd walk outside the house and be assaulted. Like,
yes.
You wouldn't be able to leave your house.
No.
Especially, like, if you lived in a busy place like New York or something. Like, you'd walk outside and be like, fuck that. Have to walk back in.
But, like, I wonder, is it something they can turn on and off? Because they all seem to get on fine.
Yeah, I guess you'd just get used to it. I cannot imagine.
And, like, think about how often you would feel the need to bathe.
Oh my god. Well, yeah, you'd smell yourself so much better, too.
Yeah, and you'd be like, oh my god, I need to bathe today. Like, every day. Like, twice a day.
Every second of the day, yeah.
I'll just live in my bathtub.
Yeah, you must be able to, like, either turn it off or you get so used to it that it just stops. I think I'd want taste.
I could see that.
I think it'd be interesting. Like, the good things would taste so much better. The bad things would be so much worse, but, like, I'd just stop eating bad things.
But my worry would be that, like, the good things that you liked, you would taste the bad parts of them so much more.
That's
you know what
a
I mean?
good point.
Like, if you're cooking something and say you slightly burn your onions, like I did last week with my chickpea curry, did I taste that? No.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I did not taste the slightly burnt onions, but if I had a heightened sense of taste, I would.
Yeah.
But I feel like we could say pluses and minuses about all of them.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
interesting times.
What would a heightened sense of touch do?
Like, all I can think is, like, would you be better at feeling temperature with your touch? Like, if you...
Like, this is 73.2 degrees.
Yeah, like, if you touched water, would you be able to determine the temperature, like a thermometer? Because, like, yeah, what does it mean to have better touch? Because, like, I wouldn't want... Because, like, right now... Because, that's all I'm saying. But, like, right now, my fingertips have been, like, marred from burning them. So now I can touch hot things and it doesn't bother me. So would they be super sensitive to hot things? Like, would I not be able to grab a coffee? Or, like, accidentally burn them and just not care? I don't know. I wouldn't want sensitive hands, so maybe that one's one of the worst ones up there with smell.
But, like,
I just don't know what it means.
But you wouldn't want hearing either. Because think of the things you could hear.
You'd never be able to sleep.
No. And, like, you could hear the next door neighbor getting it on, maybe. Like...
Yeah. That is true.
So, you know, I guess I'm sticking with
Pluses
sight.
and minuses.
I'm sticking with sight.
Yeah, that's fair. There's no real downside for sight I can't think of.
Yeah, because, like, if you have, like, supersonic vision or whatever, you could just turn the other way if you see something you don't want to see.
Yeah.
I feel like the other senses, you can't escape it. Or, like, you could close your eyes and then you don't see it anymore.
Yeah, you can't close your ears or turn off your ears.
No. Or
Good point. Yeah. Unless they can. Maybe they developed something that they can. Because, you would need to. I feel like you'd need to.
Loops for vampires?
Yeah. They'd probably just wear them all the time. Just wear their loops everywhere.
Yeah. Okay. That was fun. So we're gonna get into it. Just a heads up, this is not a spoiler-free zone, and things might get saucy.
Yeah, so we're doing week 3 now. Chapters 38 to 58. So we left off, and okay, just had to get my bearings. We left off, and Oraya and Raihn are dancing together, and it's beautiful and perfect, and they move really well together. And that's the exact moment we left off. But they're at the wedding celebration for Vale and Lilith. And the whole point of the celebration was to get all the nobles to come, which ironically was Caryssa's big idea to get the nobles to like him, was to have a big old party and bring the nobles. You're like, this is adding up now that I've read this week. Mm-hmm. Also, Oraya is trying to find God's blood for Septimus, but her and Raihn have their own little secrets together to try to get rid of the Bloodborns here. And Raihn is also trying to start an alliance with the Shadow House, the House of Shadows. So a representative is there from the House of Shadows, a guy, a prince.
Ooh.
A prince. And all of Raihn's best guards are guarding the humans who are giving blood, which seems like maybe not the best choice at this point in time. But that's where we are.
But I feel like he's trying so hard to show Oraya that who he is as a person. Look, all of my most trusted guards are guarding the humans so that they don't die. Look what I've done for you.
Yeah.
And also for himself. It's not entirely he's not doing it just for her. He's doing it for himself too. But
yeah, he used to be human too. Yeah, but I'm just I don't know. You hear that and you're like, of course something's gonna happen. All of his best guards are busy. But also too, I think it was last week we got that the human districts aren't overrun with vampires anymore. He's actually enforcing the rules, so now the humans are safe.
Yeah.
So yeah. So this week, we start in Oraya's point of view, and they're still dancing, or they just start dancing. Sorry, I forgot where it started. So they just start dancing. He puts his arms around her and touches her back, and she is graceful dancing with him, even though last week she said that Kyra sent a tutor and she immediately sent them away because it was awful. But for some reason, her and Raihn just have the chemistry that they know what the other one's doing. Oh. And I kind of get it, because I'm they've learned to fight together and move together that way. So I'm I can kind of get that they can also dance, but I'm also really?
I'm sorry, if you cannot dance at all.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you meet your one partner. I don't care. You are not immediately a good dancer just because you have chemistry with the other person.
Yeah. I think it's just the movements that they've got down. But also I guess she's never danced because she was never allowed to go to Vincent's parties or anything.
She danced with him though, remember?
Oh yeah, she did. But she wasn't she danced with him and she wasn't horrible. It wasn't tripping over each other. So I don't know why they tried to make us think from one chapter to the next that she's horrible and then she's dancing with Raihn and she's amazing. No. Ugh. I think there's something more here because things keep coming up and I'm are they trying to say that they're mates? What is happening? So yeah. They're just dancing together and he asks about her mark showing. And she says that the mantle she was wearing was uncomfortable, so she decided not to wear it. So last week, she put on the dress that Carissa had given her, and there was like a top piece, cape thingy, I don't know. And she didn't wear it, so now like her air mark is on full display, which is obviously a statement. So he asked about it, and she said she didn't want to wear it. He calls her a liar, and she just says that she's tired of hiding. And he says that some kings would see that as a threat. And, like, obviously he doesn't, because he's in love with her. And he's just like, I love it. Their dance is, like, super intimate and sexual, and everyone fades away, which is, like, a scene that I love when things fade away, because it just reminds me of Pride and Prejudice 2005.
Yeah.
It's my favorite. She can feel he's hard and says he obviously likes the dress the way it is. And he says he does. And he calls the dress an act of war. And he just like is always calling her like a hurricane or like, I don't know. It's like he
calls her he describes her as a
force of nature.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah. And I just like it. She tells him then that, like, everything's a trial, and he asks who the enemy is, and she just laughs and says everyone. He asks if he should be afraid that she's going to kill him, and she thinks it would be so easy to drag him away right now and kiss him and put his hand between her legs and have him take her against the wall while she bites his neck and digs her dagger into his chest. And I'm like, this is a very vivid fantasy of killing him.
Like, she didn't have to include any of the sexy bits.
No, but I love it.
But, like, she wants to have an orgasm, drink his blood, and kill him all at once.
Yeah.
Wow.
Black Widow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. And she, like, keeps thinking about it. She's like, it would be the perfect time with all the nobles here. And she tells him, though, that she already did. She already did kill him. And she doesn't know why he keeps giving her chances to kill him again. And he says he would spend a lifetime at the tip of her blade, and it would have been worth it. And you're just like, God damn, he is so head over heels for her.
But he's also so smooth. It's like talking about how she's like, well, I could kill you very easily. And he's like, okay.
Right? He's like, please do. I'm okay with it. What?
It's like, dude, like, slow your roll.
Right? He says then that they're going to do their grand finale and, like, launches her into another part of the dance. So I guess, like, they can't talk because it's too much.
Too complicated.
Basically. So I guess, like, kind of after, Oraya says that was stupid, and Carissa is going to be mad at them both, and Raihn smiles at her and says, let them talk. And then he kind of stumbles as he helps her up, and he's, like, swaying slightly, and she's like, it's to the point that, like, most people wouldn't really notice it, but she's so attuned to everything he does that she notices it. Mm-hmm. Of course. So she asks if everything's all right. And then Carissa cuts in and says he needs to speak to Raihn. And they just walk away. And she's just like, weird. I'm going to just stand here. So then we go to Raihn's point of view. And he thinks the dance took too much out of him. And he ends up outside with Carissa. And they stop. And Carissa asks what? Like, Carissa asks something. And Raihn says, like, what are we talking about? Because he's not really following. So, like, something is obviously going on. And Carissa basically says, like, the dance with her. And but he asks about dancing with her like that, basically. And Raihn just kind of is like, I have things to do, but he's really feeling out of it. And Carissa just says, like, do you think we're all stupid? Everyone knows she isn't a prisoner. And he's like, it's sweet, but it's just not what they want to be doing. So basically Carissa is saying, like, everybody knows that Raihn is in love with Oraya. Mm-hmm. which is interesting because it makes you wonder, like, do they think that Oraya's in love with him, or are they just like, she's not?
I mean,
this guy's just pining. Yeah. Raihn kind of like actually realizes that it's not just the dance that is wiping him out. There's something going on. He's like, yeah. So he looks at Kyrus and can see his guilt immediately. And I'm like, okay, sure. And he can see pity. And I'm like, why can we all read these emotions? But fine. Kyrus just says he can't stay with him until it goes back to how it was. He says he needs to pick a winner. So we get Kyrus was the snake? The
snitch.
Mole? Yeah. The bad guy?
Yeah.
And Raihn kind of realizes he never even suspected that it could be Kyrus. Like, it wasn't even a possibility in his head. So he's just like, what the fuck? So he takes his wings out and he tries to fight the drug off, and like Rishan soldiers come out to attack him, and they like chain him, and he fights as best he can, but he ends up passing out. We go over to Araya's point of view now, and she thinks that Raihn's best guards are watching the blood vendors, and she thinks of Raihn kind of stumbling, and then Septimus comes over to talk to her. And it's just like, that's twice in these, I guess, 3 chapters, one last week and one this week, that we get that his best guards are watching over the vendors. So it's like, if they weren't, would they be helping him, or are they going to be on the other side too? Like, which guards are actually going to be loyal to him anyway, if any? So Septimus comes over, and she sees Simon and his wife, like, over with a blood vendor just laughing. And she's like, why are they so
happy?
Why are they so happy? Like, this doesn't make any sense. They should be pissed. And she's kind of just trying to think, but Septimus is like talking at her. And he says he knew she had talents, but is surprised that she can act. And she's like, what are you talking about? And he's like, you were clearly just acting like you were in love with Raihn. And she's still super preoccupied thinking about, like, why Simon isn't upset and where Raihn went and why he was woozy. And then Septimus kind of says, oh, wait, maybe you weren't acting. And, like, obviously. And she kind of goes to walk away, but he grabs her arm and, like, pricks her skin with his nail. And we're like, shit, because that is blood. She doesn't think that, though. She just sees Simon and his wife leave and goes to follow them. Septimus follows her, and he calls her noble to go after her lover's captors. And then he uses her blood against her. And he's a prince, obviously, but I guess he's so much stronger than anybody she's had to fight before that's been blood-born.
Yeah.
It's a tongue twister. So she can't really resist it, because she could kind of resist the other ones at least a tiny bit or for a little while, but she can't resist his magic. He tells her she could have had everything, and like, it goes back to last week. He made her an offer that he could give her the crown. So he was basically like, kind of would have put her in the same situation that Raihn is in now, of like, she would have been queen, but
he would have been
Septimus,
like, an advisor.
And like his army would have been doing whatever the fuck he wanted and ignoring her, kind of. So like, because that's kind of where Raihn is. So it really doesn't make sense for her, but yeah. So she passes out, and then in the next scene we get her like struggling to wake up, and she can feel a hand on her thigh, and I was like, oh my god, what the fuck?
Yeah.
But it's not that bad. He's trying to get her dagger. So a man is saying they should have killed her, and then Desdemona, who was Septimus's guard that we saw the first week, tell Septimus in her earshot that they were going to have to move their soldiers and stuff to set up her trap thing. It's basically like his best guard or whatever. And I think like she was in the first book too. But she says that they can't kill Oraya. And then the man unhooks Araya's dagger, And before he can, like, he unhooks it, but before he can, like, take it out, Oraya sits up, grabs the dagger, and stabs him in the chest. And she knows it's not hard enough to kill him, but it does obviously distract him. But then Desdemona attacks her. And she ends up hesitating because, like, obviously they've been told not to kill her. And we know it's because Septimus wants her to find the god's blood. So, like, that hesitation makes it so that Oraya can, like, draw her fire into her blade and then stab Desdemona in the heart. So, works out well. The guy that was there was also bloodborne. He starts using blood magic against her, but she doesn't even feel it, and she's just so furious. And the night fire consumes her, and she ends up, like, straddling him and stabbing him. And all she can think is one word, Raihn. Like, she can't even think, like...
Where is
she
Raihn?
Can't even... Yeah. It's just, like, Raihn is the only word in her head. She's just like, fuck. Which is cute, because we're, like, we weren't sure. She just had a full-blown fantasy about murdering him. Vincent's sword is in this room for some reason. They obviously took it from her bedroom, but it's convenient because now she has it. So she grabs a sword, and it doesn't hurt her to hold it. And she kind of wonders how she ever thought that this was pain, because it just feels powerful, which I kind of love, because, like, last week you were like, I don't know, you said you wish that she didn't feel the pain when she touched the sword.
Yeah.
So I like that they're like, now that she's ready to accept the power, kind of, or now that she's, like, so focused on one thing that she needs the power, she doesn't feel the pain because it's just power. Anyway, I just thought it was interesting.
Yeah.
Vincent's voice says, "This is what you were always meant to be, my little serpent."
Okay, we need to talk about that for a second. So all these times she hears Vincent in her head.
Mm-hmm.
Do we think this is just, like, her?
I have no fucking idea. And I kind of, I'm like, we're at the end of this week and we don't get any closer. So, like, are we just never going to figure out?
Like, is this literally just her own head being like, this is what Vincent might say? Like, how does she know that's what Vincent wanted her to be? Like, I don't get it at all.
Me neither. I really don't. So, I'm like, it kind of feels like every time she touches things that are his, though, she does get it. So I'm like, did he leave, like, little messages to her? Or is she just, like, making it up, but then also hurting her feelings with shit she made up? Like, it's wild.
Yeah. I'm very interested in understanding that.
Me too. Like, I want to know for sure, but I don't know. I don't know if we get it.
I don't remember if we get it either.
So she kind of realizes suddenly that, like, reconciling Vincent doesn't matter anymore. Like, she doesn't need to reconcile him as a person into, like, good dad or bad person.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. Like, she's kind of accepted that she's not going to reconcile who he is. And it doesn't really matter because she is who she's supposed to be. So, like, this is really, like, a come into her power moment that she's going through. Her Nightfire crawls up the blade and her wings come out, and she uses the tunnels to, like, just get through the castle because she's in the basement, I think. And she can hear through the walls that, like, the battle is still going, and she doesn't really think of anything else. She just thinks that she needs to save Raihn. And she knows that Simon is going to kill him somewhere public. So she thinks, like, what would Vincent do? And she goes to the top floor. There's, like, a ballroom there, and there's a bunch of guards. And dawn is coming, and she can see Raihn through, like, is out on a balcony and, like, chained there. Soldiers end up lunging for her, and she's fighting, but it's easier. The fighting is easier for her than breathing right now because she's kind of, like, she stopped thinking about it, is how I kind of imagine. Like, she stopped thinking about the actual moves, and she's just killing people. She's in a killing calm.
Oh, I love that killing calm.
She basically ends up massacring everyone, and somebody, like, stabs her in the back, but she doesn't even feel any pain. And then she gets to the last guy between her and Raihn, and he lunges for her, and she asks where Simon and Septimus are, and he spits at her. So she just, like, skewers him and throws him off the balcony. We're like, okay. Raihn just says, hell of an entrance, princess. And, like, she looks over, and he's completely pinned to the castle wall. He then tells her that Carissa is the one who betrayed him. And he just says, like, can you believe that? And then starts laughing. And you're like, ugh. They start hearing voices, because obviously people are coming, because it's not like a massacre is quiet. And she tells him this is going to hurt. And she starts just, like, pulling his limbs off the wall. So, like, I think she said his wrist was bolted there, so she just pulled his wrist off. So the bolt is still in the wall, so his wrist just had to go through it. And I'm like, ow.
Yeah, very ow.
But, like, ow. So it's, like, his wrists and then his wings, and it's just so gross. But he basically tells her that she should leave because, like, they're getting closer and closer. And he's like, I'll be fine, even though he's pinned to a wall.
He definitely won't.
No, he's going to die. And he's like, I don't even know why you came, basically. And it's just his ankles that are stuck now. So she works on one and he works on the other. And he specifically is like, why did you come for me? And she's just like, we don't have time. And she also just doesn't want to think about it. Which is interesting. Like, you could die right now and you're just like, I don't want to think about this too hard. So they get his ankles free and he ends up, like, falling on her because he's so weak. And then Bloodborne and Rishan soldiers file into the ballroom. And Rail just, like, looks over the railing. And the sun is already high enough that it's, like, blistering him a bit. And his wings aren't strong enough to fly him because they had bolts through them. An arrow goes by his head. And Oraya just grabs Raihn. And he calls her impossibly beautiful. And she just, like, jumps off the balcony holding him. And, like, spreads her wings. And I'm like, her little baby wings cannot do this. Like, she can barely fly herself, but...
Yeah, but it's like that whole adrenaline, like, lifting a car scenario, I feel like.
Yeah, that's fair. So we get an interlude then, and, like, the interludes are kind of... Is it third person? Does that make sense? But they just say he instead of, like...
Raihn.
They don't say Raihn. Yeah. So in the interlude, it's like he and the queen only really talk about the king and have sex. And in a different world, they may have never gotten together because they don't have anything in common. But here, they're each other's reason to live. And he realizes, like, it's much harder to live when you care about something because the punishments are worse now because she's watching him be punished. And that feels worse than before when he didn't care.
Yeah.
And every time she's hurt, he gets closer to snapping. And then we get, like, the sentence that we talked about the first week. But she says to him, like, who wins if he snaps and the king kills him? Who wins then? But the hate completely consumes Raihn, and the king starts to become paranoid because the Kajari is approaching, and there's a Hiaj soldier that's climbing the ranks. And we're assuming that's Vincent. Raihn ends up going to the first trial and, like, can see that the king is worried about this soldier. And then at the very end, it just says, the kingdom is drenched in oil, and Raihn decides to strike the match. I'm like, I don't really know what that means. I don't really remember from the last book, but I'm sure the next interlude will pick up.
Yeah, I do remember.
Yeah, because, like, I have a vague memory of, like, did he let Vincent in and tell Vincent not to kill the queen or something? Yeah. Maybe I do remember what happens. Okay.
I just couldn't remember what's revealed in the last book and what's revealed in this one.
Yeah.
But, yeah, Raihn is the one who helped Vincent, like,
overtake.
Yeah, and, take over.
Mm-hmm.
And that was his one request, don't kill the queen. So then they gangbanged her instead.
Yeah, great. That's
so much better. Thank you, Vincent.
That's what he asked for. Ugh. So we go to Araya's point of view now. And they end up being able to, like, get to the edge of the human district before they end up crashing. Which is pretty good. I'm impressed. And I guess nobody followed them because they're like, the sun is out. But you'd think someone would still be like,
daytime.
It's worth it to make sure it's worth it to follow them to make sure they die. But nope. Lucky for them. So Raihn is like burning in the sun and slowing down, and he like collapses, and Oraya tries to get him up, and they are trying to get to his apartment building, but Araya's like, we cannot make it. But Raihn is like adamant. But he does just like collapse right outside the door. And Oraya tries to like move him into the shade, and then the man who's always asleep in the building comes outside. And Araya's just like, she doesn't know whether to ask for help or tell him to fuck off. But he says something before she can even say anything. And he says he's not a fool and he knows who they are. And he tells Raihn he doesn't know what happened, but if him helping Raihn keeps the humans safe, then he's happy. And so he like helps Oraya bring him inside and helps him up to his room. And then the man says he's leaving and locking up, and if anyone asks, he didn't see anything. So we kind of get that, like, this man has realized that Raihn is the reason that the humans are safe, so that's why he's helping him. Which is sweet.
Right. Well, they should realize it, though.
So, yeah. Yeah. Which is, like, are the humans gonna fight for them, too? I wonder, later on.
I feel like that would be a slaughter.
Because they could. I do, too. But Araya's half human. But she never really was, I guess. Like, she never was fully human, even though she thought she was. Yeah. So, Raihn collapses on the bed, and Oraya can finally feel that she's wounded, because she was just kind of in shock and, like, running on adrenaline before now. Mm-hmm. Raihn sits next to her and says, thank you for coming to get me. And she tells him that Simon talked about him like he was nothing, and like kind of uses that as an explanation, but they both know like that's not the whole truth. He says he owes her a wedding gift and gives her a package, and I was like, this is out of nowhere, but okay. So she opens it up, and it's a stained notebook and loose parchment. So she looks at the pieces of paper, and one of them is a portrait of a woman that reminds her of a portrait that Vincent made in last week she saw. Like in his hometown, he had left a portrait of a skyline. And anyway, she can tell that he made this portrait too. And Raihn tells her that it's her mother, but like she kind of had that feeling that it was her mother before he even said it. There's a necklace there too, and the stone matches the one on her ring, which I came from her mother, but I don't really remember why we know that.
I also don't remember.
We did get her. Yeah. But I guess she just took it when she was taken. So yeah, she asks Raihn how, and he says slowly. He says he's been looking through Vincent's papers from about 24 years ago, and he was putting it together himself, so like he hasn't told anyone else that he was looking for this stuff. And he says he has more questions than answers. And she looks through some more pieces of paper, and she sees her mother's name is Elena. And there's a letter about her healing magic. So her mother had magic. And Raihn says he's pieced together that she lived in the castle for a year or so and was a magic user. And there's a symbol on one of the pieces of paper, which is like a 10-legged spider, which is the symbol for the goddess Acacia, who is the goddess of the unknown and weaver of fates, which makes Oraya think of Septimus saying that her father was using seers, because she was like, there's no way he would use a seer. But he did, and it was likely her mother. So she wonders if her mother was kidnapped or if, like, Vincent actually loved her. Like, why was she there? And, like, we don't really know much else. Raihn just says, like, she looks like you, based on the picture, I guess. And he says he wishes... I know. It's sweet. And he says he wishes he could have given her more. And she just says, why? And he tells her she deserves so much more than this world is giving her. And he says he is a part of it too. And he knows that this isn't enough. And it's just like, he's so, I love, and I know like he's been alive for 200 years or whatever, but I just love how good he is with words. Yeah. And how bad she is. She is so bad at words and he is so good at them. And I just love it.
But like, also, I really appreciate that he... Like, we keep saying that her life has been so shit.
Mm-hmm.
And I just love that he recognizes that. And recognizes that he's included in her life being so shit.
He's part of the problem. Yeah.
And, like, he's trying to do his best to, like, make her life not so shit.
Yeah.
I just like that he appreciated it.
Me too. So he then gives her a bag of gold, and he tells her there's a man in the human district waiting with a boat to take her anywhere she wants to go in the world. And he tells her he would say, go be something incredible, but she already is, which was just so cute. I'm like, I love him.
Yeah, he's got straight up riz.
He does. And he says this place doesn't deserve her, and neither does he. And I'm like, aww. And he said what he did was unforgivable, and he didn't apologize the way he should have. And he doesn't want to ask her for anything. He wants to give her what she should have had ages ago. And he says she's everything. And he, like, walks towards her, and he tells her to go. And he says she thinks, like, he doesn't even have the House of Shadow allies. Like, he has nobody helping him now. He just has her, and he's still willing to, like, give her her freedom. So she's kind of like, he really means it. Which, obviously, being in his head, we kind of know he does.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like a moment for him. For her, I mean. The realization. But also, like she says in a second, she's not going to run away from a fight.
No.
So she throws his gold back at him and says she can't believe him because it's interesting now and he thinks she's going to run. And that piece of shit has her crown. And I love that she calls it her crown. And I'm like, is she going to be the sole queen at the end of this? But they're probably going to rule together, I guess. But I'm like, can she be the more powerful one? Because that's what I want. And she says, fuck you, but then she kisses him.
Aww.
Yeah, and it is intense. We have some intense kissing coming up. And she's still wearing her, like, super thin dress. So she can feel him through her dress, and she can feel how hard he is. And she pushes him back on the bed. And she sees his injuries and kind of, like, hesitates, but he tells her not to stop. And he says he doesn't care if it kills him. And he says the only good thing about the last time it happened was that she was the last thing he saw. You're like, you're just so nonchalant about the fact that she killed you, but fine. So she needs to kind of, like, take control of the situation. So she tells him not to move, and she starts taking off his clothes. And she takes off his pants, and she's like, I can't believe I'm saying it about a dick, but his cock is so beautiful. Like, it's like that kind of takes me out of it a bit. I'm like, is it though?
A one-eyed trouser snake.
Gross. So yeah. He wants her, obviously, and she wants him, but she thinks, like, there's no easy pleasure, and she wants him to suffer.
Jeez.
And, yeah. So, see, this part, I'm not going to lie to you. I was drinking a little bit when I was reading this part, and I'm like, is this what actually happened? When I reread it the next day, I was like, did I do these notes right? So if I made a mistake, it's because I had a few beer. But, so she starts off and she, like, gives him a bit of head, and she's, like, gentle at first, but he calls her vicious. I'm like, that's not really what I thought when I thought no easy pleasure. I didn't think gently giving him head, which is why I'm like, is that actually what happened? But okay. She's, like, teasing him, I guess. And then she says that he told her once that he would beg for her, so do it. So he does. And this part, I'm here for it. I'm here for him begging. And he's so good with words, like, I love it. So he's like, let me touch you, let me feel you, even though I don't deserve it. And she crawls up his body and lowers herself so that they're, like, inches apart. And he says, let me make you the queen you are and spend the rest of my life at your mercy. And he says, if he has to die, let it be at her hand. And then he asks to go to his knees for her. And she says, please. So he, like, flips her over, pulls her to the end of the bed, and kneels on the floor. And he calls her queen, and he starts, like, licking her out, basically.
Oh, okay.
And he's gentle first, too. And she's just, like, trying not to moan. And he continues to beg to, like, get her off. And
he's obviously not doing a great job if he keeps talking.
You know. But I'm pretty sure she orgasms here. But then she feels really exposed. And, like, a tear falls. So, like, there's crying. And she says, I hate you. And she thinks that she hates him because she doesn't. And so she says, I hate you. But then she thinks that she hates him because she doesn't. And I was like, this is 100% 10 things I hate about you.
Yeah. I hate
loved.
you most of all because I don't hate you. Not even a bit. Not even at all.
Yeah. And I loved it. I was like, oh, my heart. And then I was like, I need to watch that movie again. So he he looks at her like he understands, and she thinks, like, she hates that too. Like, she hates that most of all.
That he understands her? I don't get it. Yeah. Why would you hate that? Why wouldn't you want someone who understands you?
Because she doesn't want to not hate him. She wants to hate him, and she doesn't want him to know that she doesn't, I guess. But the whole scene, I was like, are we ripping off the literal speech in 10 Things I Hate About You? Because it's like, I hate you, and I hate that most of all, and this. Anyway, that could have been the beers. But I was like, oh my god, it's a play-by-play, the same thing. He kisses her then, and he says he hates how she destroyed him too. And he asks to kiss her. And she says yes. And he takes off her gown, and he asks what she wants. And she just says, your blood. And I will say, and it was another moment she was like, she didn't expect that to come out of her mouth, and blah, 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 because, like, we all know she's kind of, like, unsure about it.
Yeah.
So then we go over to Raihn's point of view. And I will say, like, I did this one sober the next day. So we're back to sober me. So just a heads up. So Raihn's point of view, and he thinks he heard her wrong because he's been thinking about her drinking his blood and, like, jacking off to it ever since she did with his thumb. And he can smell her arousal hot and sweet. So that's just a fun add-in. He takes her dagger, and it's kind of funny because he asks if there's any poison in it. Like, can you imagine? He even thinks, like, what a way would it have been to go of, like, cutting himself so that she can drink his blood, but then accidentally poisoning himself and dying. Like, that would have been really stupid, but kind of funny.
Yeah.
So there's no poison in it. So he, like, cuts open his throat a bit and says he promised her his body, soul, and blood months ago. And even if she isn't his, he is hers.
Oh my god.
I know.
But, like, can I be honest, though, and say that, like, I'm reacting to this and being like, oh my god, he's so smooth. I love it so much. Like, blah, blah, blah. If he were to say this to me, to my face, I'd be like, ugh, dude, chill it. Like, stop.
You gave me the ick.
Yeah, like, give it up, please.
Yeah. 100% agree.
It's problematic, because, like, my husband tries to, like, he tries every once in a while to, like, say nice things, and I'm like, ew, you need to stop now. And he's literally, like, he's verbalizes and says, like, you literally read this stuff every day. And I'm like, I know, but it's different.
Yeah. But I don't have to take it sincerely into my heart.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree. So, she tells him to sit up then, and she straddles him, and he thinks, like, it's a recreation of the night in the cave, where he drank her blood. And she leans in and, like, drinks from him. And he thinks, like, she's the first to drink from him since Simon and Nikolai. And, like, he was afraid it would make him remember those times. But it's actually kind of soothing how awful that was, because it's her this time and she's his wife. Right? He tells her not to be gentle, so she takes more, and, like, nothing else matters to him. And he's like, he doesn't know if she has any venom, but he feels like there's something else happening with this. So we're like, they're mates, right? Is that what this means? They're saying they're mates.
So, like, does her venom, like, does vampire venom make it feel good? Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we still don't know if she actually has venom or not. So I'm like, I don't really understand. So she leans back after drinking a bunch of his blood, and he asks if it's good, and she just kisses him instead of answering. And he says, you have my blood. What else do you want? And she just asks him to beg. And he thinks it's so easy to beg for her. And he asks her to let him feel her come around him. And then, like, she sits down on him. And she basically just, like, uses his body. And she stays on top, which is, like, a thing.
For her, yeah.
For her, yeah. Which is fair. Obviously, she had a very terrible experience, so, you know. He basically tells her to take it all because it's hers, like, his body, his blood, everything. So she drinks, and then she leans back, and she tells him to take it too. And he asks if he's sure, because he doesn't want her to regret letting him drink her blood while they're having sex. But she does say yes. So he kisses her 2 scars, and then he bites her. And it's better than anything he's ever tasted, and it's all too much. And he tells her, again, that, like, his blood, body, and soul are hers, and he'd even give her his life. He'd already given her his life, and he'd do it again. So she has some more of his blood, and then she, like, cries out his name as she comes, and then he comes too. We're like, this is a change in the book. Are they in love now? Is that what's happening? And it's like, so this is Rain's point of view, like, we know, but he thinks, like, everything is different after it. And he's like, he's had sex a bunch of times, but it didn't ever feel like this. That felt religious and, like, finding faith. And I'm like, is it just because they're quote unquote consummating the marriage. Like, I don't know. Is there more to this? Because like they've already had sex once, so I don't really know. But she collapses on him, and then he like turns her to her side and big spoons her, and he wants to say something, but she closes her hand over his, and they both fall asleep. So we go to Araya's point of view now, and she wakes up to like kisses, and she feels safe. And weeks ago, she would have been pissed at herself for all of this, but at this moment, she just feels at peace for the first time in a while. And he just says, "Evening, princess." And she looks at him, and she looks at his wounds, and they're so much better than before. And he says, like, her blood helped. And he says, "Thank you." And then she looks at her wounds, and, like, his blood helped her heal too. And she asks if that's normal. And he's just like, "Well, nothing about us is normal."
That's not an answer, Raihn.
Right? Right? And then he goes to say something, and she knows it's going to be, like, emotional and something she's not really ready for. So she just cuts him off, and she says they need to go back to the castle. And he says, "I know." And she knows that it's stupid and, like, Vincent would never do this, but they need to go back to save Mische. And she can tell that Raihn is thinking about Mische too. And she says, we're going to get her out. And she tells Raihn that Mische is likely fighting like hell. And Raihn says that's what he's afraid of. And then we kind of like jump around in Araya's head because it kind of seems a bit disconnected. But Araya just like kind of has a realization with herself that Raihn hates Simon, but he's also afraid of him. And she thinks it's the same way she's been afraid her whole life. And she wonders if, like, he sees her fear as this kind of the same way she sees his fear of Simon. Because she's like, he shouldn't be afraid of Simon. Simon's, like, nothing.
Yeah.
So it was just a weird jump for me. I was like, I don't know why it moved so fast to this. But anyway, I guess we have to. Mm-hmm. But she tells Raihn that he's better than Simon and to like fuck Simon because they're going to destroy him. She also knows like if they go back, Septimus wants her alive still, but Simon will want to kill Raihn as soon as possible. So like it's kind of more of a big deal for him to go back than it is for her because she's likely going to live. And obviously the odds are impossible, but they've been there before, and they're going to come up with a plan.
And of course they are.
Yeah. They're both heirs, and they both kind of technically won the Kajari, so they can do this. And Araya kind of like hopes a bit that like Mische being in trouble can unlock her magic and viciousness like when Raihn was in trouble. So it's like interesting. Like I hope that trauma makes me just as fighting.
Yeah. Like I hope I can get mad too. Again.
Yeah. So then Raihn shows her that he also has the communication mirror that was in the first part of the book. And Raihn asks if she actually trusts Jasmine. And Araya, like, really thinks about it. Because obviously Raihn trusted Kyrus and he betrayed him. But Araya says, like, Jasmine has been nothing but loyal. And she does trust her.
But I mean, I guess Kyrus has also been nothing but loyal. Like, he left, like, yeah. Raihn left Mische with him. So obviously trusted him. Mm-hmm. When, in the first book, when Mische got really injured. Like, that's where he brought Mische. Yeah. Was his house. So, like.
Yeah.
Also.
I don't know.
Are Kyrus and Keturah, were they together? Or were they just...
I don't know. I kind of envision them, and I don't know why, as siblings.
Oh.
But I don't think they're that either.
Interesting.
Yeah, I don't know. And I'm also like, does he not care that Keturah is still there? Like, I know that Oraya loves Mische, but I'm like, he has other people there too.
I was like, what about all of his best guards that were guarding the humans?
Yeah, exactly. Who, spoiler alert, they don't save. So yeah. She grabs Vincent's sword and she feels the power that, like we already talked about, used to feel painful. And with the sword, her and Raihn, she's like, we could almost do this with just brute force. And then she thinks of like the secret passageways that Vincent showed her only one way to get out of the castle. And he knew that she wouldn't use it because it would have been so unpleasant. So she would only use it if she really had to. Because, like, he did have a fear of her sneaking out. So, like, obviously he didn't show her every way in and out of the castle. So we cut scenes and they jump into the river, which is where all the sewage goes. And it's awful. And it's, like, almost makes me want to vomit thinking about it. I cannot imagine. So they swim to the castle walls and she has to like dive under and try a few grates before they like get one to open. And the current is really strong. So like they have to like fight against it to get inside. And then they finally get to like somewhere where they can stand. And it's just so gross. And they're both just literally covered in shit. So he asks where this tunnel is, and she feels along the wall until she feels like the outline, and Raihn tries to like shove it open, and then he's like, does it not work in this direction? Is it only for getting out? And I was like, oh my god, are they gonna have to swim through the shit again just to like
oh my god,
bad. It's
gonna make me vomit.
I know, I'm done talking about it now until it happens again. So they start kind of talking about it, and they're like, Vincent wouldn't have made this unless he could use it in both directions, but he would have also only made it so he could use it. So Oraya, like, cuts her hand and puts it against the door, and it just opens. So she kind of wonders if it's because Vincent keyed the door to work for her, or is it his blood in her blood that opened it? Like, did he just have it keyed for him? So it's like, and she's like, he hid so much from her because he feared her, but he also possibly did this to help her. So, you know.
Is that wishful thinking, though?
Exactly. Because, like, the whole book were like, her blood keys to his stuff. So why would we think that this one wasn't the same thing?
Yeah.
Anyway. So they start climbing through the tunnels, and it takes a while to get to a familiar tunnel, but they end up getting into the castle, and they hear soldiers yelling at each other. So, like, they know they're in the right place. Obviously, everything's in chaos. So, Oraya, they get to, like, a fork in it, and Araya's like, you gotta go that way to the dungeons to rescue Mische, and she's going to go the other way towards her rooms to get the pendant because only she can really touch it. And she asks Raihn if he's sure that he can do this, and he says, like, they kind of go back and forth a bit, but he says at worst he'll stay alive long enough for her to save him, which I love. And he tells her to be quick because Simon doesn't deserve to kill her, and he tells her to be careful, and she says, you too. And then they go their separate ways.
I don't know if that's a compliment. Simon doesn't deserve to kill you. So, like, I feel like who does? Does Raihn deserve to kill her? Like, is this something that is reserved only for...
They can only kill each other. I guess.
So Oraya is, like, sneaking around the halls, and, like, she's trying to get to her room, so she remarkably doesn't really meet up with anybody until she gets outside of her room, and there are a couple of guards there, and she dispatches them really easy. The thought of Mische and of what Simon did to Raihn does, like, allow her to very, like, easily do, like, the killing calm wapa thing, and, like, she just kills the soldiers quick and easy. So, her door to her room is locked. and she's like sitting there trying to figure out how to open it for a minute, like, but then she's like, oh, let me check the guards, and then one of them actually has keys, so she's like, I don't need to pick the locks, I could just use the keys.
So smart.
But then she's like, wait, why is my door locked, and why are there guards guarding it? I'm not in there.
Yeah, that's something she probably could have asked herself before now.
She's like, what's happening? So she gets inside, and she almost gets attacked by a chair, or actually she does get attacked by a chair, and turns out it's Mische. They locked her in there.
Sad.
And there was a weird bit here that I, like, found very odd, and I'm actually gonna haul it out because...
Yeah, I felt it too, and I was like, what is happening?
Yeah. So they reunited, and, like, Mische has no clue what's going on, and she had a ton of questions, but, like, Oraya was like, we don't have time, and she just goes to her vanity to look for the pendant, but it's gone.
Mm-hmm.
So, the part that was weird, so, like, it was just, I don't know what the intention was, because it doesn't really get resolved. But, like, the way it is written, it made me think that, like, Mische wasn't actually Mische.
Yeah, I felt the same way. And, like, I guess the point is that she's hiding something. But, like...
It just, maybe it could have been written in a different way.
I think but I think it was a red herring. I think we were supposed to be like, oh shit, is she bad? Like, I think it was intentional by the author. I didn't need it.
Right. So the whole thing is she went to her vanity and yanked open the drawer. And then Oraya asked, why are you here? Why are you in the dungeons? A beat of silence. Mm. And then Mische says, let's just go. You said we don't have time. I paused. There was a note to her voice that seemed odd. But she was right. We didn't have time.
Yeah.
So, like, it was just an odd, like, moment of, well, what the fuck?
Yeah. I felt the same thing. I was like, is she now bad?
Yeah.
Like, what is happening?
Anyway, nevertheless, like, Oraya's pissed because her pendant is gone, and she assumes that Septimus just must have it. So she just, like, dismisses the weirdness, and they are like, okay, let's go. So they leave the room. And on their way, of course, they encounter the Shadowborn Prince. So remember, he was here to sort of an emissary. Raihn wanted to get his allegiance. And Oraya, like, he sort of... So, like... I don't know if everybody in the castle knows what's happened, because he just sort of approaches them. He doesn't, like, make a big fuss of, like, prisoners escaped, you're not supposed to be here, or anything like that. He's just like, well, hello. And it's sort of like, do you know that they're not supposed to be here?
Yeah, or does he just not care because he's not, like, invested in either side?
Yeah.
Like, what is happening?
So, like, he gives Mische, like, a once-over before he, like, starts approaching them. And Oraya was like, it's weird that he's still here. Like, if a coup has happened, like, you would think that he would be like, well, peace out. I don't want to have any part of this.
Yeah.
But it was weird that he stayed. And then she sort of thought that, like, well, maybe Septimus is, like, taking advantage of him being here and, like, wants to get his allegiance instead, blah, blah, blah. So, like, she then thought, like, if she was better at politics, she could take advantage of his presence and, like, maybe try and, like, win him to her side. But, like, she's not.
Which I love.
She's
I love
not.
that she knows
like,
that.
I love that she is the brutal one and Raihn is the smooth talker.
Yeah.
Anyway, so he, like, approaches them and says, like, one word before Mische, like, literally jumps on him and attacks him. And, like, there's a little struggle, and Oraya almost, like, jumps in to defend Mische. But Misha's like, no, I got this. She doesn't say this, but she's like, I got this, and just stabs him in the heart and kills him.
Mm-hmm.
And after it's over, she's like, oh, shit, what did I just do? Like, sort of going into shock. But she manages to tell Oraya that this guy, this prince, is the one that turned her and left her in the desert when she got sick. Nice. So, like, did he, like, rape her too?
Like, I kind of assume so. We kind of got her backstory more the first book, didn't we? I don't...
Yeah, but I'm not...
It was really Alice Cullen.
Yes! Oh my god, yes it was!
But that's all I really remember. I
guess, like, Mische had a lot of struggles with this dude. And Oraya sort of figures out that that's why Mische was locked in her room instead of the, like, crappy dungeon with the rest of them. Mm-hmm. Because she was obviously going to be a gift back to her maker.
Gross.
With the, I'm assuming, the assumption of it's a bedroom. Hey.
Yeah.
And that made Oraya want to kill the guy all over again. But she knew she had to sort of be the one in control of the situation. So she just grabs Mische's dagger from his body, gives it back to her, and then they go find... They need to go find Raihn. Yeah. So
You also can't kill a dead person again.
No.
Unless it's Raihn.
Yes.
You can kill him again. Sorry.
So they head down the tunnels, and they go towards the dungeon. And before they get there, they can hear the fighting. And they show up to see Raihn is fighting off 6 dudes. So Oraya jumps in and helps him. And she says that, like, she missed fighting with him. Because, like, they're so in sync and complement each other so well. And she thinks it's like breathing, like them fighting together. So it's nice. They connect.
Yeah.
So, like, once all the dudes are dead, Raihn comes over and, like, snuggles right into Oraya's neck. Like, for a quick second. And then he drops her and gets the keys from one of the dead guards and opens the dungeon doors. So he lets out Vale, Lilith, and Keturah, and then they escape through the tunnels and the sewers. So, like, the same way they got in.
Gross.
Yes,
we're not dwelling on it.
No, we're not. So it's literally just the 6 of them. And they escape the city. And then there's a time jump of them traveling for an entire week.
Wild.
And, like, I don't understand. So, like, in your section, Raihn hauls out the mirror and says, do you trust Jasmine? Yeah. Is there a scene where they call her?
No, but they kind of imply in your section that they did it outside of the reader's knowledge.
Well,
but, like, they don't actually show it. Because the time jump is, like, he's like, do you trust her? And she's like, I've got an idea. And then we jump into the sewer.
Right.
So it's like,
okay.
In between then.
Because I got really confused that they're flying so long, but, like, they didn't show that they contacted Jasmine.
Yeah.
So, like, where are they going?
Yeah, I was kind of the same way. I was like, what is happening?
So, like, they travel for an entire week, and they're traveling at a very quick pace. And, like, Oraya's in pain, like, her muscles are aching because she isn't used to flying for so long. But she was really stubborn. So she's like, the Hiaj heir. She's like, I'm the Hiaj heir. I am refusing to be carried. Like, no one's carrying me. Mm-hmm. Because, like, Vale is carrying Lilith, obviously. And Lilith does have wings, but she's such a new vampire that her wings are weak.
Yeah.
And, like,
I do love that, like, if you get turned into a vampire from a human, you get wings. That's fun.
But in my head, I'm also like, Lilith is a new vampire, but, like, Oraya also just got wings.
Yeah.
Anyway. So Lilith is being carried by Vale, and Mische is being carried by Raihn. I'm assuming Keturah is carrying herself.
Yes.
So they arrive on these, like, desert cliffs, and there's, like, it's like a huge tunnel system. Like, do you know what it reminds me of? I think of, like, a big, gigantic termite mound, but instead of termites, it's for people.
Okay.
But you know what I'm saying? Like, those huge, like, dirt mounds that have all these holes in them?
Oh, yeah. I can get
That's a termite mound. So, like, in my head, I'm thinking that they're in one of those, but it's not for termites, obviously. It's for people and demons.
Makes sense.
So, like, they arrive at these desert cliffs and land, and Jesmyn pops out and says, hello! But essentially just, like, this is where the Hiaj army has been hiding out for weeks and weeks and weeks. And Jesmyn, so, like, walks her through the camp, and there's only, like, a few hundred men and women left. The rest of the army has sort of dispersed throughout the kingdom to sort of get lost, like, in other parts of the areas. But only the most loyal have remained and are, like, waiting for orders to, like, take back their kingdom, which I think is stupid.
Yeah.
But, I mean, it's just me. So, like, they're walking through these caves and, like, seeing all of these people. They've set up, like, little tents and, like, in these offshoots. And she sees that, like, the vampires are super hungry. But Oraya notices that, like, they're not looking at her like prey anymore. Like, they still smell her blood, but she's no longer their prey. So they go into Jesmyn's makeshift office, and they talk about how they look and smell like shit. But, like, all Jesmyn says is, like, please tell me we're going to take back our kingdom now.
I know,
her. Me too. So, like, they sort of talk about all that's happened, and Oraya asks Jesmyn's, like, how many soldiers can she get? And it's about 1,000. Which, like, is not enough to take the city against Simon's army and the Bloodborne army that's there. And so, like, Jesmyn and Vale exchange barbs, and Raihn asks Vale how many loyal men he could get, and it's about the same. So both generals are sort of, like, think their army is enough to take the other army, but not enough to take the capital city. But together... Together, with 2,000, they have a chance. But, like, at first, Jesmyn doesn't really want to work with them because she doesn't trust the Rishan, and she doesn't want to fight to take back the throne for them.
Yeah, which is fair.
But Oraya tells her that, like, this is an order. And she's like, you're not just fighting for the Rishan to have the crown, but that she would also have it. And her and Raihn would rule side by side. And the Hiaj would be free. And not, like, persecuted like they are now.
Yeah.
So, like, this is sort of the first moment that Oraya has sort of, like, vocalized and voiced her intentions to stay married to Raihn and, like, rule with him. So, Jesmyn sort of says, okay, fine, but, like, this is going to be really hard. And Oraya's just like, man, we've done hard things. But, like, it's interesting that Oraya is sort of, she's including herself in the Hiaj. You know what I mean? Like, she's considering herself a Hiaj vampire at this point.
Yeah.
So they ask for a place to wash, and Jesmyn asks Oraya for a moment of time alone. She's like, there are hot springs, conveniently enough.
Right.
Like, near the bottom of the mountain, cliff, cave stuff. So there are hot springs down there. So someone's going to show them all down there, but she wants to talk to Oraya first. And she asks, once they're alone, if Oraya really intends to rule beside Raihn, like, together, like a married couple. And Oraya just says yes. And then Jesmyn just assures Oraya, like, that she has her loyalty. Like, Jesmyn is loyal. And I just really like that. Like, I like that they sort of in the first book, they sort of pitted Jasmine and Oraya against each other. Like, Oraya didn't like her. But I like how, like, she's not what Oraya thought she was. And she's actually, like, a really cool person.
It's similar to I guess, Vale. Like, they had the same kind of journey as well, in a way.
I know, but it's...
Which is funny.
Yes.
Because it's literally back-to-back conversations.
Yeah, but it's also, like, it's so much easier to make the woman the villain. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. And, like, in the first book, I was like, whoa, she's a bitch.
Yeah.
Because, like, she also tortured Raihn. Like, obviously, it is under Vincent's orders. Like, we can't fully disregard that part either. But we did have that scene, and we were like, what the fuck?
Yeah. Anyway, so then Oraya tells Jasmine all about, like, the god blood and what Septimus thinks, and asks if Jasmine knew anything. And Jasmine's like, nope, I do not. And that surprises Oraya because she thought that Jasmine and Vincent had, like, you know, they had an intimate relationship. So, like, she thought that he would tell Jasmine things. And Jasmine actually says, like, what, because I was his war general and he fucked me, that he would tell me things? Well, he didn't. And Oraya then asked, like, did you love him? And she thinks that it's an inappropriate question for most occasions, but she said for some reason, the space that they're in and the conversation that they're having, it was not awkward to ask. And Jasmine does answer, and she says, I loved him as my king, and, like, I could have loved him as a man. But she held herself back because she knew he would never love her. And he would never open himself up to more weakness. And for vampires, that's what love is. It's just a weakness.
Yeah.
And especially for kings. And he couldn't open himself to any more love or any more weakness than he already had with Oraya.
So they really easily could have made these two women jealous of each other and pitted them against each other.
Because, like, Jasmine is essentially saying, like, maybe he could have loved me and I could have loved him, but he had enough love in his life with you.
Yeah. He didn't want any more obvious weaknesses. And yeah.
She then also tells Oraya that, like, even though Vincent didn't tell her about the god blood, she thinks, like, it's definitely something he would do. And
which I just kind of love that.
And Oraya is just sort of like, oh, I wish we had the pendant. Like, oh, I'm such a, like, she's sort of berating herself a little bit about the fact that Septimus has the pendant. But Jasmine told her that, like, Vincent was way too paranoid to hide the weapon behind just, like, one key. So, like, she was like, he would have multiple fail-safes and multiple hiding places. So she's thinking and making Oraya hope that maybe there are multiple hiding places and that Simon and Septimus don't have all of it.
Yeah.
So then we go to Raihn's point of view. They're in the caves where the hot springs are, and Raihn wants to talk to Mische because he can tell that there's something wrong, but she's avoiding him. For the past week, she's been avoiding him. And, like, everyone parts ways to bathe. I guess there are a whole bunch of smaller hot springs everywhere.
Mm-hmm. Convenient.
Yes. And the only one that lingers is Vale. And the reason he lingers is to assure Raihn that he didn't betray him. And that it's a weird thing. He says, like, his loyalty sort of lies with Lilith, is how I interpreted it. Mm-hmm. So, like, he's just trying to say that, like, whoever keeps her safety in mind that's who he's going to be loyal to. So because Raihn sort of treats turned vampires and humans better, and because they rescued Lilith along with Vale, then obviously his allegiance is with them. He then apologizes a bit about their past because Vale was, again, one of Neculai's top generals, so he witnessed the abuse that Raihn dealt with and just didn't do anything about it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, he didn't participate, but he didn't say anything either.
Yeah, he was complicit.
Yeah.
Complacent?
Complicit?
Both.
Complacent and complicit.
Yeah.
So he just says that, like, he loved the House of Night and his king because he had no other love. So he ignored the way Neculai treated his slaves, even if he didn't agree with it. And Vale sort of understands as well that as long as Raihn is king, Lilith will be safe. But under Simon and Septimus's rule, there's no guarantee. So essentially saying the only reason I'm loyal to you is because of my wife.
Yeah.
I'm not crazy about it.
No. Like, he could have worded it as, like, you're a decent king, so...
Yeah.
But, no. He's like, you keep my wife safe, I am happy.
Yeah. And Raihn then sort of assures Vale that Oraya, Lilith would also be safe under Araya's reign. And it's sort of his, like, he has a double meaning to be like, if he dies, support Oraya. Mm-hmm. That's sort of what he's trying to get at without saying it.
Yeah.
So Vale agrees and bows deeply at him before leaving to bathe. Finally. So Raihn finds, like, a place and gets in the water, and, like, his clothes crack, like, as he takes them off because they're so filthy and full of shit. And I don't mean full of, like, just various shit. I mean literal shit.
I know. I'm like, couldn't they have, like, bathed in streams on the way?
I know.
Isn't there...
They've been sitting in this for a week.
Yuck.
And, like, some of them are still in their, like, fancy dresses from the party.
So awful.
Or maybe they all are.
Raihn and Oraya changed into leathers at his apartment. Okay. Yeah. But everyone else, like... Yeah. Is Lilith just in, like, a wedding dress? Like, I don't know what their wedding dress looks like. But, you know what I mean?
Well, Mische is still in her, like, silky gold...
Yeah.
How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. No, yes, How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days dress.
Yeah, I love it.
So he dips under the water, and when he comes up, he can tell he's being watched by Oraya. He can smell her.
Because of all the shit. Sorry.
But, like, so then we go back to her point of view, and she is staring at him. Because he is so hot. And, like, he's like, what are you doing? Like, anyway, so then she strips off, gets in the pool with him, and she just admires his air mark. And, like, she's, like, trailing her finger along it. It's on his back, so, like, she's behind him. And she just keeps, like, running her finger along it and, like, studying it. And she thinks that their marks are actually very similar and have the same components, but in different arrangements. So she's like, in effect, like, we're supposed to be enemies, but our marks are, like, the mates of each other. And it's just funny that she uses that word.
She does use that word, because I was like, what does that mean?
Yeah. So, like, she's touching it, and he admits that he doesn't like it. Because he doesn't like that he, a.k.a. Neculai, has marked him permanently. Like, it's his mark, and now it's permanently on his skin, so he doesn't like it. But Oraya just sort of assures him that this is not Neculai's mark, this is your mark. Mm-hmm. And, like, all the time, she's, like, getting him all hot and bothered a little bit by trailing her finger up and down. So then he finally turns around to face her, and I'm like, is he gonna just, like, slip it in? Like, just slip it in.
Slip it in.
Right away. He doesn't. But he then traces her mark. I think her mark is on her front.
Yeah. It's on, like...
her sternum and stuff.
Yeah.
And he assures her that, like, her mark is also beautiful and it's made for her. And then he asks if she meant what she said to Jasmine about ruling by his side. And she says yes. And she does reference that, like, she's not sure he might not fuck her over again. but he just tells her never, ever again. Like, even if he didn't need her to take back the kingdom, he will never, ever betray her again. And then he kisses her, and she thinks about how since the last time they were together, last week, she hasn't been able to think about anything else.
Hey. So everyone can just smell it?
Oh, no, because the smell of it's the smell of shit.
Yeah, that overtakes it. You're right. Yeah. Sorry.
So then she just, like, wraps her legs around his waist, and then he, like, pins her to a cave wall. And, like, but he does check in with her because, like, every other time they've had sex, aka twice, she's been able to, like, she's been the one in control, and she's been the one that can easily extricate herself. But, like, now with him pinning her, she can't really escape, I want to say. So, like, he just wanted to check in, like, on her trauma and see if, like, this was all okay, which I thought was nice.
Yeah, very nice. Very thoughtful.
But, like, then she runs her finger along the tip of his wing and, like, makes him, like, shudder. And she's like, it's okay. I know who's really in control here. And he's like, yep, yes, you do.
It is you. Yeah. Thank you.
So, like, essentially she's like, dude, just fuck me. So, like, they do, and it's, like, really hard and fast, and they're, like, teasing each other about having to be quiet because there are other people in other caves right now. And, like, so she buries her head in his shoulder to, like, make sure she doesn't make noise when she comes.
Stifle the moan.
Yes. And then he does it with her. He does the same thing. He, like, nuzzles into her neck, shoulder area. And to stifle himself, he bites her. And, like, in my head, I'm like, you literally were just checking in on her trauma. And, like, this doesn't... Yeah. This isn't causing... This isn't doing anything for her, like, in a bad way.
You didn't ask. Yeah.
But, like...
You didn't...
Yeah. He just was like, but he doesn't drink from her. Yeah. Which I guess is the important bit. He doesn't drink from her.
Yeah.
So, like, she thinks about how she missed him. Like, she missed his friendship over the past few months, like, when she was hating on him. But she's also missed, like, the physical, you know. Woo!
Yeah, of course.
And then she knew that, like, they would probably not get another chance to be alone. So, before, like, he hadn't even, like, taken it out. He hadn't even, like, removed the peen from the vagine. And he starts, like, moving inside of her again, and they have sex again.
May as well.
So, over the next few days, they plan their attack. They want to do it hard and fast.
Love it.
Because they don't want Simon and Septimus to sort of, like... They want to do it when everything is still reeling from the coup, right? Like, they don't want them to get a chance to get comfortable. Yeah. And, like, everybody is tiptoeing around Raihn and Araya's relationship. Like, nobody trusts each other. Except for Vale. Like, Vale's the only one that's like, yeah, they're a thing, it's fine. Everyone else is like, are you sure he's not going to betray you again? So Raihn finally, like, we're in his point of view. So he's like, enough is enough. I'm going to pin down Mische, who's still avoiding him to see what's wrong. So, like, backstory, Oraya has already told him that Mische killed the prince. But she doesn't tell him why. Yeah. So, for Raihn, he's like, okay, I need to talk to Mische to figure out what's going on. So, like, now so he meets up with her and he's like, we're gonna do this. We're gonna talk. And then they argue because she doesn't want to tell him, or it was sort of like confusing because he's like, Oraya told me about the prince. And she's like, well, then why are you talking to me? Like, if she told you, then why do we need to have this conversation? And he's like, whoa, like, all she told me was that you killed this prince. So, like, what's going on with you? And then they're fighting about it. And, like, I like that he did that. Like, I like that he, like, verified that, like, yeah, she told me you killed the guy, but she didn't tell me the why. Because then that sort of shows that, you know, she's not a tattletale and she's not just going to tell the guy she's seeing every little thing.
Yeah.
Anyway, so he finally gets it out of her of who this prince guy is. And he's really upset that, like, she didn't tell him sooner. And he's also upset that he didn't get a chance to kill this guy. And, like, he thinks that in the future this might be a political headache. But he's, like, pushes that aside. He just thinks of, like, how that seeing him must have made Mische feel. Because he says that, like, in the first year after she was turned and, like, not sick anymore, she had no idea who had changed her. So, like, every time she saw another man, she sort of thought, oh my god, this could be him. So, like, she was being tortured every time she saw a guy. So, he's, like, pissed that she had to go through the trauma of seeing him. But then she tells him, she's like, I knew you needed that alliance. So she's been beating herself up about it ever since she did it. Because she's like, I knew you needed that guy. Like, you need the Shadowborn Alliance. And she's like, I fucked up. I killed him. Yeah. And she's like, I know that you wouldn't give a shit about killing him, but, like, you sacrificed your life, and you also gave up Oraya for this opportunity that Mische sort of thrust upon him in the first place by entering the Kajari. So she felt like she shouldn't screw it up for him.
Yeah.
And that sort of made him realize that, like, he thought that all the sacrifices he's been making has been just his sacrifices, but, like, in reality, other people have been affected by the choices he's made. And I guess he didn't, in this, like, quest for power, and I guess it's sort of like a parallel of, like, how he doesn't want to be that leader that is always searching for more power, but he sort of has been doing that a little bit.
Yeah.
Anyway, he tells her then that, like, it doesn't matter, and they're gonna deal with it when it, like, they'll just deal with it, whatever comes. So, next we have I'm calling it a training montage, but it's just, like, one of those, like, over the next few weeks, or over the next amount of time, because it's not actually a few weeks. I think it might be, like, a week. Like, it's not very long.
Yeah.
But, like, it just shows them, like, sort of prepping their plans on how they're gonna, like, do an assault on the capital city and on this castle. So soldiers have been, like, trickling in as they've been called by Jasmine and Vane. So, like, Vane's been calling his loyal guys, Jasmine's been calling her loyal guys, and they've all been coming and meeting them in this desert cave system. And obviously they're mixing together. And that is not normal, because normally the Hiaj and the Rishan hate each other's guts and fight each other at every opportunity. And for some reason, they're not really doing that. Like, I think, so it's Araya's point of view in this chapter. And she's like, only 4 have died, which is unheard of. She's like, that is so... like, that is practically camaraderie right there. Like, they're practically besties because only 4 people have died. And I will admit, for people that hate each other to get together and only 4 of them have died amongst, like, we'll say 1,000, it's pretty darn good.
Well, it's 1,000 each, isn't it? Like,
but they're not.
Oh,
they're
some
not,
have to meet
some
them.
Some are meeting them on the way, so I don't know if it's 2,000 as of right now.
You're right, but yeah, it is funny because it's like, if you put the Montagues and the Capulets together for 5 seconds, there's like 50,000 deaths.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what it's like.
Yeah.
Oh my god, this is legit Romeo and Juliet vampire version.
It 100% is.
I smell a title. So, they move out, like, relatively quickly, and they make their journey back to the capital. And all of this, again, is sort of like, I want to say it's like a montage, but it's not a montage of, like, what they're doing, but it's like, oh, we have so much hope, like, they all want to get our land back, and, like, it's just one of those, like, very hopeful, like, they're trying to, like, psych us out to be like, yeah, this is gonna be a battle, and they're the underdogs, and they're gonna come out on top.
And I bought it. I fucking bought it hook, line, and sinker, and I am a fool.
Well, you gotta think, because we still have a whole week left.
Listen, so much can happen in a week.
Yeah.
They're, like, barely in love yet.
Yeah.
They've had sex once, this book.
Yeah, well, no. Twice? Well, 3 times.
Oh, yeah,
3 times, really, because he went again.
Yes.
Anyway.
But
yeah, you're right. They're not, like...
They could have had a week of falling back in love and, like, happily ever after.
Yeah.
But they're not. Spoiler alert.
Yeah. Anyway, so they make their journey back to the capital, and, like, other troops are sort of meeting up with them and joining up as they travel, and, like, some are just gonna meet them, like, back at the capital. Vane's got some, like, ocean guys that are gonna, like, meet him. This town sounds really bizarre because it's, like, surrounded by desert, but there's an ocean.
Yeah. The whole place is just a blob in my brain. Like, the whole map.
Yeah.
It's all desert for me.
Yeah. But it is. It's literally all desert except for there's also an ocean. And I'm aware that there is an ocean next to some of the big deserts. But, like, usually there's a big mountain range in between to get that effect to create a desert. I don't think there is one here. I think it's just ocean, castle, desert.
Yeah. I don't get it.
I don't either. It's fine. So they're sort of like, they're on the path, and like I said, they're sort of like gearing themselves up for this battle and like trying to be like, oh, we're the underdogs, but like, ooh, maybe we can do it. And
we've got faith.
Yeah, so like, I guess Araya's just like thinking, are we gonna be enough? But like, all the troops are really invigorated, and like on one of the last days they were gonna stop and rest, but the troops are like, we don't wanna. So they're like, okay, we'll go for another half hour, and then they're like, yeah. So like, everyone's really like raring to go. So they stop outside the city and just set up camp, and I'm like, they're just setting up tents like everybody can see them. They're not trying to hide. And I'm like, isn't that bad strategy?
Nobody can do anything during the day because they're all vampires.
But like, obviously, but I just like, wouldn't you want an element of surprise?
But how would you do that if you like can't be out in the sun?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, it just feels odd that they're just like setting up camp so that like Sivernage, the capital city, and like all the people within can just see how many people there are.
Yeah. It's not very smart. But I don't know what else they could do. So I got nothing.
I don't know. I guess I'm not a
strategist.
Yeah. Tactician. Anyway, so then like everyone's resting. I say the night before, but obviously it's the day before because they're vampires.
Yeah. We're gonna call it night every time.
Yeah. So it's like the day before the big battle, and of course like Raihn and Oraya have like a moment with each other, and it's obvious it's not a sexy moment, it's like a heartfelt moment. They're reaffirming their bond, I guess, before the big battle.
Yeah.
So like they talk about the view of Sivernage from here, and Raihn mentions that when he hauled himself out of the ocean and saw the city, like when he was a human before he was changed, he thought he was saved, but like of course he wasn't. He was made prisoner and imprisoned.
Yeah, and we did kind of get like in the interlude, it did say that like when he pulled himself up, he was like, holy shit,
yeah,
this is amazing, basically. But I don't think I brought it up.
Yeah, but it's fine because he talks about it now. And then Oraya asks him if he wishes that he had said no, because, again, part of his story is Neculai encountered him dying as a human and asked if he wanted to live, and he said yes. So Neculai turned him into a vampire and then kept him as a sex slave for 70 years.
Yeah.
So she just asked, like, would you say no now? Knowing, like, if you could go back. And his response was that death would have been better than the next 70 years. In other words, he would have rather died. But there's something to be said for the years after that and maybe the years to come.
I love it, really, but also,
And Araya sort of feels unsettled at the thought of battle tomorrow. Like, she thinks the city is quiet and, like, there are no guards guarding the gates, or, like, she just doesn't feel any, like, movement inside. So, like, she's having, like, not a crisis. She's just nervous and thinks that something is off.
Well, maybe she should listen to her feelings.
Maybe she should. But then, like, Jasmine is floating around and overhears this conversation and just, like, pops in. And she's like, actually, they don't have enough troops for that. So they're concentrating their forces to the inner city. And I'm like, you really believe that, Jasmine? Like, you felt that you needed 2,000 soldiers to go to, like, storm this castle. And you don't think that they have enough? Like, really?
Yeah. I also love that she's like, well, actually.
I know, she just pops her head in. Anyway, Araya, like, she's a little bit afraid, so Raihn just gives her a pep talk and tells her not to stop fighting. And she hugs him, and he whispers to her that she was the best part of it all, which is
that's sweet.
Actually very sweet. But she thinks that sounds like a goodbye. Well. But they just don't move, and I guess Jasmine sort of, like, backs away. But they just, like, she just, like, lays her head on his shoulder, and they just cuddle each other for the rest of the night, or the rest of the day. So, that evening, they all set out. Jasmine has a ton of summoners in her army, and they summon a shit ton of demons to fight for them, which is, like, super smart. Like, genius. So they had, like, this fourfold attack. So Vale's allies would come from the sea. Raihn would lead an aerial force with Vale. Keturah would lead a ground force to cut through barricades. And Jasmine and Araya would lead a group through the tunnels. And I'm like, poor Keturah, like, she's the most expendable, so you shove her on the ground.
Yeah, like,
everyone's now.
Are we blaming her for, like, Carissa's?
Maybe.
And also, we haven't heard from him yet.
No.
So we don't know if he died last week, if he's still around, if he'll come back next week, because I haven't finished the book. We don't know anything.
No, we do not. So, Oraya and Raihn give, like, a heartfelt goodbye. She tells him to be careful, because Simon doesn't deserve to kill him. And he tells her to give him hell. So then she raises the Taker of Hearts, and they all charge. Charge! So then we have a little bit of a quicker back and forth POV right now, these next few chapters. So we go quickly to Rain's point of view. They're flying, and they see Keturah fighting, like, and he's like, well, she's going to have to fight the Bloodborne soldiers because they don't have wings. And they, like, then he looks up and sees Rishan flying at him and his aerial force. And he's like, shit, there's more than we thought there would be. And I'm like, of course there are. There's always more than you expect there to be.
Yeah.
Ugh.
You had too much hope.
Yeah. And he's looking everywhere for Simon. Like, I guess Raihn thought that he would be leading the lines to show his strength and power. So thought he would be, like, in the air with his troops. And I'm like, who are you? What kind of integrity do you think these people have?
Yeah, I never thought that. Not even for 1 second.
No.
It's like in Gallivant, where they're like, and now we retire to the refreshments during the battle.
Yes. because the leaders never fight.
Yeah.
Anyway, so he doesn't see Simon anywhere, so he just hurls himself into fighting like some random Rishan. So they're using a tunnel that Oraya didn't know about, but Vincent had told Jasmine about it. So Jasmine knew about it. Oraya's sort of like, oh, he told Jasmine, but he didn't tell me. Meh.
He doesn't tell me anything.
Yeah. Anyway, so they're running through the tunnel and they can hear fighting above them. And then there's this big boom, and that makes them all, like, really anxious, because they're, like, underground, and I would be freaking out. I'd be like, oh my god, we're underground. There's a big boom. What if we're going to get closed in? What if we're going to get trapped? Like, ah!
I 100% thought that was where this was going. I was like, oh shit, that is going to, like, collapse on them. I do not want this.
Yes. However, Oraya then feels this, like, toxic smoke in her lungs that, like, pushes up against her magic, and I'm like, oh shit, is this gonna go somewhere? Haven't really figured that out yet.
Yeah. Interesting.
And she just gets in front of Jasmine and is like, we need to get above right now. So then we skip back to Rain's point of view. And, like, he's busy fighting, and he, like, loves it. He loves being unleashed, as he calls it. Like, he just loves being able to fight and kill everybody. Yeah. And then all of a sudden he sees Simon standing on the balcony, and he can feel that, like, something is wrong. But nonetheless, he still flies for Simon. Like, it's just dumb. Listen to what your instincts...
What else was he supposed to do?
Listen to your instincts, people.
I guess.
So, Simon's, like, a good warrior. So, like, they start to fight. And Simon's good. But all Rain can think about is how similar to Neculai he looks. Because Simon and Neculai are cousins. And they look this similar. And he's been thinking about killing Neculai for years. So he just puts everything he has into this battle. Sort of like he's, like, metaphorically killing Neculai.
Yeah.
So he finally notices that, like, he starts nicking at Simon and, like, getting the upper hand. But whenever he injures Simon, Simon doesn't react. He finally pins him. And feels that, like, this isn't right. Like, almost like it's too easy almost. And he looks at Simon's eyes, and they are vacant and bloodshot and just not reacting at all. So Rain looks around and sees Septimus watching from a window. And that sort of furthers Rain's feelings that, like, this is not right. So he checks Simon out and sees that his clothes are open at the top. Like, his shirt is unbuttoned. And he sees silver, like the silver of Vincent's pendant, smashed and melted into Simon's chest. And then surrounding the metal, like, still in the metal, not in his skin, but in the metal, there were teeth welded in. And Rain remembers Septimus's earlier talk when he told them about the god blood, how he told them that he found some god teeth. Sorry, Oraya asked, what did you do with the teeth of the god of death? And at the time, Septimus said, nothing. You didn't do anything. But Rain realizes now that this is what you do with them.
Yeah, stick them into a guy that's expendable.
Yeah. And he only had time to look at Simon's face, like, briefly, before Simon released this, like, he, like, does this weird smile, and then he released this chilling burst of magic that, quote-unquote, rearranged the world.
That's not good.
No. It is not good. But what's even less good is that that's where this week ends, on this, like, cliffhanger. Which is unfortunate.
Very unfortunate.
Yeah. So, I don't know, like, there's a lot to clue up next week. Like, we have an entire battle.
A love story.
We got it all to get back into.
Yeah.
And... you know, who knows what'll happen? I know what'll happen, but that's besides the point.
Like, clearly it's gonna wrap up, but At what cost?
Yeah, so I think the big thing about this book is that the series is not over. So this is a 6-book series. However, books 1 and 2 are the only ones that have Oraya and Raihn as the main characters.
Yeah.
And
that makes sense.
To be fair, we're not 100% sure, and I say we as in the fans are not 100% sure, like, if the other books are going to focus on the other kingdoms, because there's so we've had 2 books on the House of Night kingdom. Then there's the Shadow House of Shadow and the House of Blood. Yeah. So we don't know if the next 2 books are going to focus on one of those houses, and the last 2 books are going to focus on the 3rd house. Yeah. Or if it's just going to be about the main characters, because book 3 is called The Songbird and the Heart of Stone, comes out next month, November 19th, and it is about Mische.
Oh, yay!
Yeah.
I forget. We don't know what house she is, do we?
Well, we do, but she's House of Shadow because the prince from the House of Shadow is the one who was her maker, so... She's House of Shadow.
We don't, yeah. Yes. We didn't know it last book.
We did not. And we know it this book because we found out who her maker is.
Yes, yeah. That's the only reason why we know. Yeah. So the House of Shadow, I guess, doesn't have wings, because obviously she didn't have wings.
They don't.
Yeah, that makes sense. I forgot we literally found it out this week.
Yeah, so that book is called The Songbird and the Heart of Stone.
Interesting.
Yes.
Is she going to fall for one of his brothers? We don't know, obviously. Yeah. So I guess we're going to call it for this
We are going to call it. So I don't even remember why I brought that up. Oh, I remember why I brought it up. Anyway, we can safely assume that whatever happens, Oraya and Raihn's tale is going to end this book. Like, their focus.
Yeah.
The focus on them is going to end. So whatever's wrapping up, got to wrap up.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what I was trying to get at. Just took a while.
Makes sense. All good. So yeah, that wraps it up for this week. If you want to get in touch with us and share your thoughts on anything you heard in our episodes, or if you have any book suggestions, please reach out to us by email at coffeeandcoread@gmail.com or on Instagram or Facebook at coffeeandcoread and coffee.coread on TikTok.
So next week we will be finishing Ashes and the Star-Cursed King, chapters 59 to the end. So make sure to follow along, and if you're enjoying our chats, don't forget to follow, rate, and review wherever you get our content. Thanks for listening, everyone, and we'll see you on the next page.